Gang, what's up? Welcome back here to another edition of The Fishing Teacher, and much appreciated you guys watching today's video. Got a good summer video for you guys today. We're going to be talking about summer swim jig fishing. Going to give you guys some tips and advice on how I like to do it. Sort of a basic foundation if you're not real familiar with the technique, because it's a really good way to catch fish anywhere like from June, July, August, early into September. So we're going to get into some good info on this. So anyway, guys, if you're not familiar with what a swim jig is, we've talked a little bit about swim jigs in the past, but we're going to really dive more into the summer aspect of it. A swim jig is basically a jig. It's a skirted jig, just like a regular pitching and flipping or finesse jig, but the head on it is more streamlined, because when on a swim jig, it's not designed to fish on the bottom. A swim jig is designed, just like it says, to swim through the water column. So the head design is more of a inline head. Now this is the Megabass Uzo Swimmer swim jig, and I'll put the Baitworks link in the description if you guys want to check some out. But this is a inline swim jig right here. It's got a good nano coated hook on it. It's got a little blade on it as an added attractor too, which sometimes help. So this is the basic swim jig, but we're going to talk about summer swim jig fishing specifically, and it has a lot to do with the color of the swim jig and the areas that you fish in. Now, you guys that follow the videos regular here on The Fishing Teacher and on my channel, my main channel, Intuitive Angling, you probably get sick of hearing me talk about spawning perch and spawning bluegill in the summertime. But guys, I can't reiterate enough how big of a factor this is in bass fishing. So the thing about I want to talk about today is the bluegill pattern swim jig. Now, this is what I consider a bluegill pattern. Any type of a green or some orange or watermelon, something like this, it's going to resemble a perch, especially if you put some type of a chartreuse dye on the tail. Now, most of the time in the summertime, I do dip the tails like chartreuse or maybe a little bit of orange, and sometimes I'll add some chartreuse or more orange into the skirt to make it look like a bluegill. So the color is real important. I think a lot of people, when they think swim jigs, they think about a white swim jig, which is a shad imitator, closer to the shad, or a dark one like a black and blue, which is more like a crawdad brown. But the greens are going to be, for the perch, and that's what we're going to focus on today. So the places you want to fish this, a lot of it has to do with the type of lake you're fishing and the water clarity. In order for a swim jig to work good, guys, you have to have a little bit of off-colored water. They're not a clear water type bait. So I like to have like a very maximum depth of like 2.5 or 3 foot of visibility. Ideally, I like probably say 12 to 15 inches in visibility is ideal for a swim jig in the summertime for the perch pattern that I'm talking about here. Now what this does is when you have that type of water visibility, it simply makes them bite a jig better. If the water's too clear, they're going to get too good of a look at it and they're not going to bite it. And if it's too dirty, the swim jig doesn't put off much vibration or water displacement or noise, so they're not going to bite it in muddy water. So that, again, that 12 to 15 inch visibility is ideal. The places you want to look for, and we've talked about this before, is any place a perch would spawn. Now, in most lakes across the country, perch are going to spawn towards the back ends of the coves. They're going to spawn like behind boat docks. They're going to spawn, on flats, shallow flats, that type of stuff. Anywhere where the bass are going to spawn, because perch will spawn pretty much in the same places the bass is spawning. So one of my favorite techniques is I'll look at a map and I'll identify maybe 15 or 20 good coves that are fairly flat where I think like bass would spawn at in the spring. And I get in there with the swim jig. I get about halfway back in the coves and I just start casting it to the bank, working all the way to the back. I'll throw it out there, keep my rod tip high, and I'm reeling it and just shaking it at the same time. I'm not just reeling it in, I'm reeling it and shaking it. And I try to keep it within like 6 inches of the surface, and it's just, I'm reeling it and shaking it, and it's just going through the water, just sort of undulating like that, barely underneath the water. Ideally, I like to keep it in sight. I like to throw it out there. I like to fish it shallow enough where I can get a glimpse of it, or it might occasionally go out of sight and I'll bring it up again. And then a lot of times, in fact, most of the time, you can see the fish actually come up and get it, and they'll leave a boil behind it, almost like a topwater lure. Most of the time, I'm fishing it on a 20, 25 pound test Seaguar and Vizex line. A lot of people like braided line. I don't like braided line because I think it's too visible. I do pretty good with the fluorocarbon line and just cover water with it. But guys, Anyway, right now, all summer long, get you a bluegill pattern, some type of bluegill pattern swim jig, and just get into those flat coves. And it's a really good way to catch them if you don't like to get out off the bank and fish deep. So hope it helps out. We'll talk later.